Yeah, I like this one here. Listen up. So many times in my life.
What's good, Facebook family? Welcome to another edition of The Room. I'm so excited about our conversation tonight because I have my mentee with me, Miss Arielle Brandy. One of the reasons why I'm so excited about Arielle is because we are both from the north side of South Bend. She is a graduate of Indiana State University, where she received her bachelor's degree in political science with a concentration in legal studies. A proud Afro-Latina, voting rights advocate, and community organizer, she is passionate about empowering Hoosier women and youth. She has become her community's go-to on policies impacting the Black and Brown communities, voting rights, voter registration, and voter education. She is the co-founder of Vote Safe Indiana, a bipartisan nonprofit with the mission of improving safe voting rules amid COVID-19 pandemic. Arielle was most recently the Indiana State Director for the Pete for America campaign. As State Director, she led volunteer and voter outreach efforts throughout the state to help drive success in each early state primary and built a strong coalition of elected officials, candidates, organizations, and party officials support for Pete Buttigieg in the state of Indiana. Please welcome to the show, Miss Arielle Brandy. Arielle, how are you?
I am good. Feeling real good today.
It's so good to see you. You've been everywhere, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I'm so proud to have you as a mentee and a fellow North Sider representing for South Bend, Indiana. So I wanted to have this conversation because right now we're in the process of national conventions. The Democratic National Convention was last week. This week is the Republican National Convention. And then there's a lot of things going on in news and politics. And so I just wanted to make sure that people had the right information that they need going into this voting season. So please first tell us, how did you get into politics? Why is this a passion for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up on the North Side, which you can attest to, we know what our neighborhood has been like. You know, it's predominantly Black. Our families have been there for generations. We have not seen much change. We're slowly starting to see more of our elected officials pour resources into it. But it wasn't until I had gotten to college and really understood, you know, why my neighborhood looked the way that it did, you know, why my house wasn't, you know, as big and fancy as other houses. And a lot of this stuff is interconnected with policy. You know, it has to do with housing. It has to do with having access to certain resources. It has to do with engaging with your council members or your mayor, and understanding the process in which you can get those resources to your community.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't until I got to college that I had the knowledge of how the process works and how I, as a voter, am able to vote people into office that are going to want to help people that look like me and are going to want to help my neighborhood thrive. And so once I, you know, got to Indiana State, you know, took my first poli-sci class and really had an understanding of policy, that for me was when it clicked. And then I was able to see how much policy impacts Black and Brown people on an everyday basis, from everything to where we live, what we eat. Policy and politics is involved in everything. So from there, it kind of just gradually took off for me. So that's why I'm in this work. Just want to be able to help and make sure that our people understand the importance of, you know, voting and policy.
So this passion for you sparked a long time ago. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the organizations that you are involved in and some of your responsibilities?
Yeah. So right now, my biggest responsibility, especially during this time, is being president of Indiana Young Democrats. And so, you know, I oversee all of the young Dems in the state of Indiana. So ages 14 up to 35. So if young people are looking to get involved in the Democratic Party, I'm helping connect them to chapter leaders, to their district chairs, getting them engaged with campaigns in different areas of the state of Indiana. But most importantly, making sure that they're registered to vote, and that we as young people are, you know, holding our elected officials accountable, and what we want to be able to see for us as young professionals, high school students, college students, and also helping elect people that also, you know, are aligned with us in our values. So, you know, we're engaging young people all across the state of Indiana. and really pushing them to do more than just vote. But, after the voting process is over, we're showing up in spaces and we're holding the elected officials accountable. So doing a lot of that work with Young Dems, which gets me involved with Young Democrats of America too, because when you serve as a chapter president, you're also a representative of your state on a national level. So, proud to serve in that capacity with Young Dems of America. And then also too, I serve as the alumni chair of Hoosier Women Forward, which is a women's leadership group, women's democratic leadership group in the state of Indiana. We're on to class 3 right now. And so we've done 3 classes of women, somewhere between 20 to 25 women for each class that we've done. And I was in the first inaugural class. And it was great. I learned so much in the first class that really, propelled my career as a woman, not only through mentorship, but just really, focusing on what it is that I want to do, and how to navigate myself in spaces that may be majority white or male dominated, which we see a lot of in Indiana, unfortunately. And so being a part of Hoosier Women Forward, I get to encourage other women to step into leadership roles, whether they're running for office, wanting to serve on a board, getting involved in the public or private sector when it comes to jobs and employment. We're helping build, a strong bench of women that are just ready to go in government spaces, nonprofit spaces, or what have you. So, doing work with, IYD, Young Dems, and Hoosier Women Forward, locally in South Bend, obviously helping out with the NAACP and doing work around that. And then, there's Planned Parenthood PAC board that I'm on, really helping push women's reproductive rights, and really focusing on Black maternal health. So, there's so many things that I'm involved with and working on in this space. So, I forget half of the stuff that I do sometimes until it's time for a board meeting, but those are right. Those are some of the top ones that, I'm involved with and working on right now.
So you're so busy. You have a busy schedule. You're involved in so many organizations and on boards. And not only that, you are a mom of 2.
Yes.
So how is it balancing everything that you're involved in? Do your daughters get a chance to see you in action? And what does that mean for them to see mommy out here on the big stage doing great work?
Yeah. So, right now we're trying to balance e-learning, which I know you're getting very familiar with. And so, kudos to the teachers that are having to navigate, teaching during COVID, but also the parents too, who are having to step in. And right now my balance is, figuring out their schedules, but also, in the process of balancing my own schedule too. It takes a lot of communication, a lot of time management. And sometimes for me, it does take saying no, which sounds very shocking, but I've gotten a little bit better at, saying that I don't have the capacity to take something on. And also being really intentional about my schedule. I've before was one where I would overbook myself, or I would think that I could squeeze everything in, and then realize that I was having minimal time for rest. So I'm just trying to be better at, saying no when I don't have the capacity to do it. But also, allowing them to be able to see me do this work too. So they're excited. Obviously, they got to see me do the Democratic National Convention when I did roll call with Mayor Pete. They were super excited about that. And, they got to see me do, the national campaign trail alongside Pete. They've been able to, when we were doing events, they would come with me to events. And they have just been immersed in the process too. So they see it. And I can tell that it's made them little leaders within their own classroom spaces.
Hey.
Yeah. And it's just nice to see them interested and, excited about some of the same things that I am.
Speaking of representation, because everything you were alluding to talks about representation. So something powerful just happened within the Democratic Party. Is on the Democratic ticket. We have a Black and Indian woman as VP, representing for VP. What does this mean for, for you, for us, for every little brown and Black girl across the United States? What does this moment mean?
I mean, this moment is, one, it's historic, but it's also very pivotal for a lot of little Black and brown girls who, maybe aspire to run for office one day. But for me, it's like we are one step closer to having a Black woman be the next president of the United States.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm so excited about, because aside from the fact of, Kamala being one of the most qualified, and I think we need to talk about that more, because most people thought, oh, he's going to need to pick a Black woman because we need diversity on the ticket. No, she was one of the most qualified people to be picked in order to serve in that space. And so I think that, no matter her record and how people feel about it, for Black women, when we're trying to make our way into political spaces or any space at all, it's for me very powerful. And for, I'm sure, a lot of women, no matter what, I saw all over my social media the day that she was announced, so many Black women, talking about the tears they were crying and how joyful they felt about the fact that, they are going to be able to see themselves in our hopefully next vice president. And, my daughters were excited. We went and bought all of her books. Because we know how historic this moment is going to be. And, their first reaction was, she looks like me. And that right there within itself just goes to show you that representation is very, very important, especially in political spaces, because we need to be able to have, our own in there to be able to understand what we go through.
Yeah. It was such a sweet moment in talking to my daughter about it. At first she was like, so she's going to be the first Black woman president? I was like, no, VP. And she was like, okay, good. So I still have time.
Right.
It's like, yeah, she's paving the way for you and other little Black and brown girls across the world to become president. So most people don't know this about you. So you kind of alluded to it, but let's just officially call you what you are. So you are a Biden national delegate for Indiana's 2nd Congressional District. How did this come about, and what are your responsibilities?
Yeah, so, we just wrapped up Democratic National Convention, which I was bummed that we couldn't meet in Milwaukee, but obviously we know with COVID that wasn't going to happen with bringing thousands of people together. But, I ended up running to be a national delegate because I wanted to, be a part of the process a little bit more than what I was. Being a delegate allows you to be able to, one, have a say in the selection process, and you're able to cast, a vote on behalf of your state for the next president and vice president of the United States, which is a big deal in the political world. Only a certain amount of folks are able to do that. So, I ran as a national delegate during our Democratic State Convention, and then all the other delegates that were state delegates were able to vote on who they wanted to represent them in their district or within the state of Indiana. And, I was selected to represent, the 2nd Congressional District. And we were able to bring around over 25 young Dems to become national delegates too. So we had a very large youth delegation for convention. And, in regards to duties, a lot of it was I attended a lot of caucus meetings to hear about what's happening within different constituency groups across the country, hearing from different elected officials, activists, and folks who are doing this work. And the impactful part for me was that, we got to hear from, Biden and Kamala and everybody firsthand. But then, I also got to be a part of the Indiana delegation roll call, which was very exciting.
Yes. So for those of you who did not see roll call, it was so powerful. It was so powerful, so diverse to see so many people come across the country together to cast their votes. And I was so proud to see you standing there for Indiana, right behind our former mayor, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and casting that vote during roll call. What was that moment like for you to stand there? And I know for you, it was, we all couldn't get together because of COVID, but then here you are on national TV where everyone can see your face. Like if you were there at the national convention, no one probably would have saw your face, but like everyone saw you. What was that moment like?
I mean, it was one, I don't think that I had, comprehended the intensity or the impact that it would have in that moment. Pete had invited me to come and do roll call with him. And then he had asked if I had any ideas on other folks that should be involved, in the process. And it was great because a lot of folks didn't realize who else was in the roll call with us. So it was myself, Pete, Miss Cordelia Burks Lewis, who is our vice chair of the Democratic Party. A lot of folks don't know that we have a Black woman who has been leading in this work for over 20 years now. She's in the labor unions, and she's been a very pivotal person behind, voting in Indiana too. And so a lot of folks didn't know who she was. And then we had our state party chairman, John Zodi, who's been doing this work for a very long too, helping make sure that we have, Democrats in office. But for me, I was just going because I thought, I'm president of IYD, I was Indiana state director. But then, as it was airing and my phone was blowing up, Twitter went crazy, Facebook went crazy, everybody pictures and videos, and they're like, is that you? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And it wasn't until I was hearing the impact of what it meant to be able to see a young woman like me, standing next to somebody who was a presidential candidate, for my friends to be able to see me on national TV, and for the fact that, folks were pleased with how diverse, we were as the state of Indiana. And if folks were confused about the location, but if you're from South Bend, how impactful the Studebaker building is on our city. So, it was just also explaining that too, because folks don't know the history behind, what that led for South Bend and what that meant. So it was an exciting moment, even though we were just standing there and he was, reading it off, it's important, over 26 million people saw a roll call that night. And, we're able to see, Pete, he was the only presidential candidate that got to represent his state that night. And there were only a few young Dems that were a part of their state's roll call. So I feel honored. It's very exciting. And I got, time to chat with him before, and it was great to catch up and, just enjoy the moment.
Yeah. What I love about it is, and not to sing our praises, but I'm going to sing our praises for a little bit. We are two Black girls. Arielle is Afro-Latina from the north side of South Bend, Indiana. And to see you on that platform in that moment just spoke volumes of the dopeness that we have here in this city. And I know a lot of people want to leave South Bend. Everybody want to flock to Atlanta or to Dallas because they think, there's nothing for them here. But there are some dope young people in our city that is impacting the world. Yeah. Right here from the hood, from the neighborhood, like we are just representing. And I'm so proud of you. I'm very proud of you for representing all the organizations that you represent. But for me, it was the representation of South Bend, but not only South Bend, like the north side. Right. It was the north side for me. So that I was just so proud.
Thank you. In that moment. I appreciate it. I mean, it's great to be able to have someone like you that, came from the neighborhood, understands, and also, has had to work very hard to get where you are as a Black woman. So we're in this together. But it's very empowering to be able to see. And like you said, there's so many young people in our area that are doing great work. So I'm excited about what's to come for all of us that are here. And if you're somebody who's thinking about leaving, talk to us. We'll be happy to help point you in the right direction.
Get you connected here. Stay here.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about what you believe is at stake in this next election.
Well, I mean, one, I will say everything is on the ballot right now. Education is on the ballot. Healthcare is on the ballot. Our rights as Black people are on the ballot. We know that, especially with everything that's been happening around the Black Lives Matter movement and the most recent shooting that we just saw in Wisconsin. We know that everything for people of color right now is impacted in every single way. Our post office is under attack. And we probably never thought that would happen. But now here we are. And we can't even get our mail on time because somebody is upset in the White House right now. And, you know,
crazy.
I know, it's crazy. So we have that. But also, you know, we're dealing with a pandemic that a lot of us have, never, you know, imagined what would happen, but we're here and we're trying to navigate through that. So I would say right now, everything is at stake. You know, from your housing to the food that you eat, it's everything. I don't know how to break it down any more simpler than the fact that like we have to show up and vote in November, or vote early and vote by mail, because it's literally for a lot of people life or death, and it should be for everybody. We've lost over 170,000 people in this country already to COVID, and it's going to keep going up. And if folks don't think that policy didn't play a part in that, then they're mistaken, because it did. We've had a broken healthcare system for far too long. And now we're looking at how it's disproportionately, you know, affected Black and brown people. And that's in every area of policy that we have. There's not one area where we aren't disproportionately affected by it. And so we have to be able to show up at the polls in November, and realize that for us, you know, it is a life or death situation. And if we want to get better as a country and use this moment that we as Black people have to be able to leverage ourselves to actually get some work done, I think we have the right opportunity to do it. We just need to be able to mobilize and show up.
Yeah. So last week was not only the DNC, but it was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the legal right to vote. But we know that 100 years ago, everybody wasn't voting. And so even though that was, you know, a great addition to our Constitution, there were so many of us, Black and brown and women still especially, we're not able to vote, and we are still fighting for our right to vote. So today we're dealing with voter repression, as you alluded to some of the other issues that we are coming up against in this next election in order to vote. Why is it so important for especially the Black and brown community who believe that their vote does not matter? Why is it so important for us to do whatever it takes to get out and vote?
Yeah, well, I think one of the important things that you mentioned in the beginning is when we just celebrated the 100 years of the 19th Amendment and the women's suffrage movement. And what we know for Black and brown women is that we didn't gain our own rights to be able to do that until way far later. And there were things put into place that still made it difficult. You know, that we still had to go through literacy tests. We still had to be able to pay, you know, the tax at the polls. There was just so much more during the Jim Crow era that we had to deal with that everybody else before didn't have to. And so I think that's one of the things that, you know, I know that more folks have been shining a light on that now more than ever, because before we were only talking about Susan B. Anthony, and everybody thought that she was this great, you know, woman for pushing this movement through, but didn't realize how racist she really was in the process. And, you know, when we're talking about this work, you know, it also goes back into now about how voter suppression is still very real and is happening. And so we have voter ID laws where it makes you harder to be able to show up to the polls to vote. And then obviously we have the attack on the post office now. But the important part out of all of this work is that we have had so many of our own people fight and literally lose their lives or almost lose their lives in order to get us to the point of having a Voting Rights Act. We look at the work that John Lewis did behind all of this. And, you know, just to be able to know his story and how hard he worked for us to be able to get to this point, we have to be able to show up for not only ourselves, but for our ancestors and the folks that, you know, did this work and laid the groundwork for us before. But also too, you know, if you're somebody that's frustrated with the fact that, you know, your child can't go to school right now, or you're upset because you couldn't go get a COVID test, and you wanted to, they said it was free, but then something hindered you from not being able to do so. Or, you know, you want to be able to go to restaurants and freely be able to do what you want to do. Well, guess what? There's some policy tied to all of that stuff in your state legislature, and your council members and all of the folks who have the power within government are making those decisions for you. And so if you're somebody who's feeling, you know, very not happy about what is happening right now, whether it's around COVID and most importantly, around what's happening with police brutality and racial injustice, for me, it's a no-brainer. There should be no reason as to why we as Black people should sit out this election, because we have blatantly had all of the disrespect handed to us over the last 4 years. And Trump has been very, very vocal about how he feels about us, what we should and shouldn't have. And that for me, it propels me to want to get more people involved. So I'm talking to all of my friends and telling them about how they need to be able to, one, get registered to vote, but also show up and vote, because that's the most important part. We just have to do it.
When is the Indiana deadline? Let our people in Indiana know when our deadline is to register to vote.
So October 6th is the last day to get registered to vote in the state of Indiana. And you can either pick up a voter registration form from the St. Joseph County voter registration office, or you can do it online on your phone, your laptop, computer, whatever, at indianavoters.in.gov, which will take you to be able to, you know, fill out the form, and then they'll mail you something with where your polling location is. In St. Joseph County, we have voting satellite centers, so you can vote anywhere in the county. You don't have to go to a specific polling place anymore. So they did make that change. So that's one of the things that we have to, you know, make sure that voters understand and know, is that you can now vote anywhere in St. Joe County. There's going to be a list of places you can vote. Now, one of the downfalls right now is that, you know, our county went from 200 polling places to now we're going to be reduced to, I think, maybe 34 or 35 for the general. And we saw in the primary, we only had about 11 or 12. So, you know, COVID has really hit when it comes to elections too. You know, it's impacted how much work election workers are able to take on. They're having to process more, but also too, we're cutting polling locations. So accessibility isn't as easy. And we're really pushing vote by mail. But October 6th is the last day to get registered. Now you can start requesting your absentee application so that you can have your ballot mailed to you at home. And all of that information is on the Indiana voters website as well. So all that information is there. And you can also call the voter registration office and they can go ahead and just mail that to you.
Thanks for that information. And if you don't know where to go, rewind this and listen to where you can go to be registered to vote. So, Arielle, this is my last question for you. We recently lost a giant in the civil rights movement, John Lewis, and he has encouraged us to be social responsible leaders and to get into some good trouble. I want to know, what is some good trouble you're getting into?
Yeah, so I had the honor of meeting John Lewis just last year in 2019. Spur of the moment meet and greet that happened shortly after he had gotten off a flight. You know, knew his chief of staff at the time, along with some of my friends that were a part of the Pete for America campaign. And it was during the Atlanta presidential debate. And we got 30 minutes with him. which in a politician's time is a lot of time to be able to to be able to interact with somebody and to have that, you know, intimate moment. And so we got to talk to him, and he asked us all individually, you know, what do we do? What were we doing at the time? And, you know, his last parting words for all of us, you know, our whole group was, you know, to continue to get into good trouble. And so it's not just a saying or something that, you know, he just always, it was real. You know, he said those very same words to me, and it did stick with me, because a lot of folks think that, you know, trouble is supposed to be bad, or it's this, you know, thing where you're trying to be mischievous or sneaky or whatever. No, it's, you know, causing a revolution, shaking stuff up, getting the work that needs to be done, and being unapologetically, for me, Black at the same time, and really pushing towards what needs to happen to get to where we need to be. And for me, the good trouble is, one, electing the right people into office that I know that I can hold accountable once they're in there. Making sure that they're aligned with what Black and brown people need, because we are the ones that have been oppressed for so long. It's time now for them to start taking us seriously if we're going to start showing up to vote for them. And that's just, you know, the end of it. Another thing, good trouble for me is, you know, in every space that I'm in, people know I'm very vocal about when things are, you know, not only just disenfranchising people, but when you're looking at a lens that does not include people of color. It doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 500 company, I will be happy to call you out on it. If we're on a board and the board is entirely too white, or if we're not being inclusive in our policies and how they're going to impact, you know, me. Growing up on the North Side, I know what that feeling is like. So if I can be in a space where I can be an advocate and also be a voice for, you know, my people, then I'm fine with doing that. And if it makes people uncomfortable, that's fine too. You know, that's a part of the process, and that's a part of the work. So, you know, for me, everything that I do is probably good trouble in John Lewis's eyes, because, you know, I keep pushing and making sure that we don't just have representation, but that we're being inclusive in the process. And you know all about inclusivity and what that looks like.
Girl, don't I? Don't I? Well, Arielle, tell people how they can get in contact with you or follow you on social media platforms.
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, obviously Arielle Brandy, and then you can find me on Twitter, which is Arielle, ARIELLE _ MOYEE, which is my middle name, Moye. So you can find me on Twitter, and then also the same handle for Instagram, Arielle _ Moye. And, you know, just come check out my work. I tweet a lot. I'm on Facebook every so often, trying to post and keep folks updated on when they can hear me speak right now, because, you know, a lot of the things that we're talking about are very important during this time. So follow me, enjoy my journey through politics. There are not very many Black and brown women in this work, so I'm always very honored to be in the spaces that I'm in and to represent South Bend, Indiana.
Well, thank you for having this conversation with me tonight, and to my Facebook family. As always, it is a pleasure to bring you new content every week, and thank you for joining us tonight. Make sure that you share, like this video, and leave a few comments. Thank you, guys.
My philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.